Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm part of USL. My name is Maggie Natras. I'm here with a few other students who have been partnering with CARW and now Beyond False Solutions to start talking about a wide variety of topics today and kind of get everybody situated with things about climate justice and how we can create solutions that actually have an impact and a lasting impact and aren't just for show or greenwashing. So I'm super glad to have all of them here. They will start introducing themselves either shortly or right now, that's up to them. But we're gonna wait a couple minutes just to make sure that everyone can get on. Until then, I guess if the students want to introduce themselves, they're welcome to.
Hi, I'm Jackson. I'm a sophomore at South Whidbey High School and a member of USL.
Annie and Claire are on here as well. I think they're having some technical difficulties, but we'll pass it along to them if they can. I believe they're just somewhere in the void that is the internet. So Annie and Claire are also somewhat here, or at least in spirit. Annie is the same age as me. We're both going into junior year. Claire is going into sophomore year, and we all go to the same school system, which is actually really nice.
Yeah, we were having, I don't know if you guys can hear us at all. Thank you, Maggie. We're having some technical difficulties. We're being logged in and out, but we can hear you all sometimes. So, yeah.
One benefit of recording this.
Any other USL students here? Just the four of you?
Yeah, it's just
Great.
the four of us. Grace might be on here, but she thinks she's going to come on later, and she didn't exactly help plan this, but she has been part of USL before.
Question for Derek: Would it improve the internet performance if some of us took the cameras down, our cameras down?
That won't affect the performance, but I think from a presentation perspective, that would be up to the presenters if they want folks to have videos on in some cases, or videos off in some cases, depending on what mood and flavor is wanted.
And if everyone was to mute themselves if they aren't a presenter, that would be great, especially because if any noise pops up, you get pushed to the front of the queue and you would be recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, just keep your mic off for the time being. I believe there will be a couple breakout rooms, so that would be a time to keep your microphone on. But until then, it's just for privacy if you don't want to be seen. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Thank you, Maggie. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica. I'm a member of CARW, which, if you're not familiar, stands for Coalition of Anti-Racist Whites. I'm part of the Climate Justice Solidarity Group. And I actually took part in this workshop you're about to experience in person about a year ago here in Seattle. And I'm very excited to be here. I'll be facilitating the PowerPoint today. And I'm gonna pass it over to Sandra.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra. I'm part of the CARW Climate Justice Group. And I've attended a couple of these that happened last year, and it's my first time presenting, but I'm really excited to share what we have with you. And I will pass this over to Maya.
Hey y'all, I'm Maya. Use she, her pronouns. And yeah, I'm also newer to facilitating, but I'm really excited to step into that role and meet you all and hopefully just learn from each other. Great to be with you. I'll pass over to Sage.
Hey guys, I'm Sage. I'm also part of the CARW Climate Justice Solidarity Group, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to presenting on this. See, we got a lot of people, so I think it'll be fun. I'll pass it over to Carter.
Hey everyone, my name is Carter, she, her pronouns. I am also a member of the CARW Climate Solidarity Group, Climate Justice Solidarity Group, and I've helped out with these workshops last summer. I'm excited to see how it goes virtually. This will be our first time doing it in this format, and it's exciting to see it happen. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to, I think Jake is left.
Hey everybody, my name is Jake Hipsch. I use he, him pronouns, part of the CARW Climate Justice Group. Thank you all for coming, by the way, in time where we're all on Zoom all the time and we look at computers a lot. So thank you for that. It's really exciting to see everybody here. This is my first time presenting, and I'm really looking forward to working on this with you all and going through this journey. And I believe that is all of us.
Great. So we're going to be going into a lot of content, but before we do, I just want us to get into our bodies for a minute and just be here and present as much as possible. So it helps us learn. And I would suggest that you take a gentle inhale and exhale. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze. And feel gravity, feel the earth is holding you. That's what gravity is. And you might feel it in your bottom or your feet or your arms resting on your thighs. And you can also feel your sense of the sky through your inhale and your exhale. And I want to acknowledge this land that we're on, that we recognize and honor that we're on ancestral grounds of the Snohomish, the Coastal Salish, the Duwamish, nations that have been here and caring for the land for time immemorial, and some have not been granted the recognition for who they are. And as we connect to the earth, I want to go a little deeper in our imaginations into the earth. So you might be able to imagine if gravity is holding you, you can feel the chair, feel the floor, go under the floor to basement, the beams, and under your building to the soil that's there, the microbiome, the fungal network, the tiny little bugs, the roots, the water, because we're really here because of our connection to the earth. So I encourage you to take another gentle breath and feel yourself and your heart connecting to the earth and to each other in this online but warm community. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes looking at something small before you look around and see where you are. Thank you. I want to acknowledge people who have helped us be here today. The first is the Movement Generation Justice and Ecology Project. They have created and passed on much of the content that we'll get into today. Indivisible Whidbey and Calyx have been co-sponsors. Did I get that right, Maggie? Okay, good. And we're also grateful to work with the United Student Leaders for the People, and we have historically worked with Got Green as part of Climate Justice Group. The CARW Climate Justice Solidarity Group seeks to center leadership of communities most impacted by climate change, such as communities of color, low-income folks, people with disabilities, and we fight for a just transition that put people and planet over profit. We hold ourselves accountable to partner organizations that focus on environmental justice through direct support and parallel organizing. And I can share a link if people want to know more about who we are. We've done short facilitator introductions, but what I'd like to do before we get into the heart of the matter is for each of us to introduce each other. And I'd like to do that in breakout rooms. So what I'd like for people to do is share your name, your pronouns, and answer this question: what gives you the most power or joy in climate justice work? And it's a short group, about 45 seconds a person. And you should see a little sign coming up in a moment asking you to join the breakout group, and then you'll see another sign and you'll automatically come back to the larger connection. But it's a way for us to know each other in a more personal way.
Just to add on to that for a moment, when you get sent to the breakout room, I will also broadcast into the breakout room this question, just so that you have access to it. So I'm going to open these rooms now, so you'll be invited to go into them. So,
Thank you.
Ed, Larry, it's good to see you both. Again, my name is Jake. I use he, him pronouns. And just following the prompt that we have, what gives me the most power or joy in climate justice work is like connecting to the land and realizing just how regenerative it is for me. And really being able to feel like I'm doing work that is sustainable for many people. And that's something for me that's been important.
Ed, do you want to share a little bit?
My name is Ed Halloran. I'm an employee of Rotary in terms of this activity. I'm an executive director for youth services, and we are working closely with the Interact group here at the high school. And my job is to make it successful. Thank you.
Marie, do you want to share? We just have a few seconds to introduce yourself and what gives you joy in working with climate justice, or Natalie, or Larry, or Mur. Open it up.
Yeah, I can share. Here, let me turn the video on so you can actually kind of see me. Yeah, so my name's Marie, my pronouns are they, them, and although I don't work directly in climate justice, this runs parallel to a lot of work I do. So one thing that really brings me joy is being a part of something that's going to leave a legacy.
That's great. And I think we have about 5 or 10 seconds. If anybody else wants to join, I'd love to hear. Just saying what gives you power and joy in climate justice work.
Well, this is Sarah, and I would just say that what gives me tremendous joy is watching the USL student leaders become skilled leaders and increasing their capacity to affect change, and you know, to inviting us elders in at their back to, you know, observe and give some experience, but really let them take the leadership.
Yeah, they're a great group, and I appreciate you saying that, Sarah. Yeah. Jack, do you have anything to share?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just got on just a couple minutes ago. I'd say something that I've experienced is the feeling of just a lot of energy, so physically and mentally and spiritually, knowing that there's others around me who care so deeply about the same things. And so it also just brings optimism to be able to actually envision change. And I think that's what gives me the energy from that, the community with that.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And welcome everyone back. I hope that you got some good connections with other people that are part of this group. I ask everybody, if we can, if you're not leading or talking, to turn your sound off. It would be helpful. And I just want to give you a general framework of what to expect from our time. We have a lot in a short period of time. And partly I feel like talking at like 1.5 times speed, but I also want things to settle in. So I'll just share what we're going to do. We're going to use breakout rooms as often as we can to make the connection. We're going to be talking about what climate justice is, the dominant system, the world we need, and the agenda that's up there. I want to share that we're here to explore real solutions to climate change. And it can feel very daunting to face these challenges. We're taking our time in this workshop to understand the root causes of what is bringing us to this moment. And you might notice, or you may not, but you may notice some impatience coming up because we often want to get to the solutions. But I encourage you to come back to the present moment. A good way to do that is to notice where you are, the colors in the room you're in, press your feet to the floor, and to be able to really learn what we have to offer, and then we'll be able to have the groundwork to move forward. So we're going to build a framework together for how to understand climate justice and evaluate solutions. We'll apply that to some real examples, and we will bring that to bear on real steps we can take ourselves. I want to share some core agreements with you. If you disagree with any of these, please share it in the chat. That will speak from our own experience. So instead of talking about you or other people, it's I. Lead with curiosity, being interested in new ways to look at things or explore the ways you already do. Lean into any discomfort. Take care of yourself, take care of each other. And then Zoom rules, which is, for me, there's no Zoom rules. So I think that people get tired of looking at the screen. So if you feel that you need to look down or look away, take care of that. If you feel the need to turn off your video, while I love to see your shining faces and your responses, you taking care of yourself is a key piece here. But I appreciate your presence as much as you can. So Erica, do we have time for a quick breakout room on what is climate justice?
No, I think we should probably move on.
All right, so let's just, you can add to the chat what you think climate justice is and what comes to mind when you hear the term climate justice. And in the meantime, unfortunately, because of time, I think we'll move on to the next slide. And I will share our perspective. Sorry, you don't have time to sort of make this a conversation, but from our view, climate justice focuses on the root causes of climate change, making systemic changes that are required to address unequal burdens to our communities and realign our economy with our natural systems. If anybody has any comments about that, be glad to hear. And I'm reading now, climate injustice is ensuring no one is unduly impacted by climate change or pollution from fossil fuel or other forms of energy. I think that's true. That's great, Sharon, thank you. So I encourage us to just take a gentle breath again. That section is done, and we are going to turn it over to the next leader, who happens to be me. So now I'm going to be in a different role, and I'm going to talk about our current economy. So here's a question. And please answer in the chat if you can. Off the top of your head is great. What does economy mean to you? Last time someone said finances, resources. Yep. A system for distributing goods or services. That's great. We often hear of economy in terms of the stock market, but I'm glad for the bigger perspective of what it is. Movement of money. Yep. So for our definition, we're going to go back to the roots. Oh, those are some great things. Total ecological system, having access to what needs for living. There you go, Gary. You are leading right into the next slide, which is eco means home. It doesn't just mean green, it means our earth. Onomy is the management of, and economy is the management of home. Over history, there have been many, many ways to manage our home and have commerce. And we're in a time that clearly isn't working for most people. And jumping ahead, we're labeling that as extractive. And we'll talk about, as we explain what this economy is, why it's extractive. But we're going to start just by using that word. So here's the question. Does the extractive economy manage our home? Sort of a given. The answer is no. So here's something that, Erica, again, do we have time for a short breakout on this for 3 minutes, or should we just do it in the chat?
I think we could do a short breakout, maybe like a 2-minute breakout.
Okay, so a 2-minute breakout to ask yourselves and share, how has the extractive economy benefited and harmed you and others? So if we can do the chat quickly, again, I realize it takes a little while to manage that. Okay, great.
So since everybody to their rooms, Malcolm, I can see that you're still part of this just open room here.
So welcome, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you.
Note I see also.
And Annie, yep. So I'm curious, Malcolm, if you can see how the extractive economy has benefited or harmed you and others, if you feel willing to share. And if you don't, that's also fine.
I don't know how to answer it. My situation, I guess it hasn't affected me that much directly, but I'm retired. You know, I'm in financially okay shape, and so I'm not personally affected, but I am very cognizant of, and it troubles me, all the stuff that's, you know, going on around me.
Yeah. So you can, it sounds like you can see how it's harmed other people.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting by comparison. Oftentimes there is a certain benefit, as I'm sure you're aware of as well. You know, just the ability to make money and to make choices that many of us have had.
I mean, as I'm retired, I'm actually busier now than I've ever been. And the one thing that's really affected me is I was going to go east in August. I was hoping to visit a scientist that I'm friendly with at Woods Hole on the Cape, and then I was going to spend some time with one of my best friends, who he and his wife bought a second home in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, Lenox, and then from there, my brother is retired and has a home on Lake George, and so all that kind of stuff is,
yeah, it's a tough time.
Not doing anything and just keeping busy doing stuff locally.
Thank you. So now we're coming back from the chat. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you had a good connection with others. What we're going to move into now is a definition of the extractive economy. This can be so not quite academic, but very heady. So I'm going to do my best to make it more visual, but feel free to let me know if you get lost at any time. So can we go to the circle? Yes. So there's an equation for what an extractive economy is, or an equation for what economy is. It's resources plus work creates some kind of value and purpose. So let's start with resources. If people can share in the chat, how do we deal with resources right now? How do we get resources? How do we manage them? I think of one thing to start your mind thinking is we often dig for resources, harvesting them. Yep. We often burn, deplete them. That's true. We dump them in the ocean. Yes. So I think extraction, that's the word, is we take them out without any way to honor where they come from, how they're renewed, and how they're best used. So that's one part, which is the resources. The next part is work. Same question for you. What is labor? I think we have another circle somewhere as well. What is labor? And how do we manage labor? I think people oftentimes feel fairly used at work as a start for most jobs. Exploited, yep. People who do the most direct physical labor are paid and recognized the least. Physical. Fossil fuels to displace human labor. Yep, human labor is certainly not considered as a high value for for most people, for the economy. Anything else for labor? Expendable, excellent. So we have resources, alienated, that's great. Resources plus labor equals the purpose or value. So here's the question. What is the purpose or value that labor creates in this current economy? I'll just give you a hint. 1% is one piece of it. Profit, yep. Money for the top. Sorry, my trash is coming in. I think one thing that billionaires, yep. I think it's interesting because it's not just money for the top, but it is, somebody was mentioning hoarding. There's a services and goods, yep. There's a sense of hoarding and enclosure, a sense of protecting those who have the most. And I think certainly in our corporate run economy that the people that corporations really value the most are stockholders. Not the people, not the consumers, not the people who work, even despite all the commercials you can hear about that. So we have that basic economy, and then we have a framework that holds this, this equation in place. And at the top is our worldview. So what is the worldview or culture that maintains this economy and makes it feasible? Power, yep. Capitalism, yep. Yep. And one particular piece about capitalism is consumerism and individualism. We're seen and valued as individual consumers versus our inherent humanity. Humans over all other beings, absolutely, Sarah. That's very painful and true. Not just growth is good, but greed is good. And there is no such thing as enough. You're right. All of those are very true. And then the bottom circle is, well, actually, let me back up a minute in terms of this top piece. The identities and experiences the extractive economy really honors is, and especially with individualism, is white supremacy. The capitalist economy was established by stealing land and using stolen people as slaves to create a huge cotton. The beginning of our capitalist economy was really around cotton production. And it has continued even after the end of slavery with Jim Crow and the prison population and even the school to prison pipeline to continue to have slavery through the prisons and to keep a group of people from having, remember when I talked about the hoarding piece? So to keep a group of people outside of the wealthy small container. That's making sense. So at the bottom circle, which is asking what governance or enforcement maintains this economic system. And I think you can say their names and have the beginning of that answer. Militarism, yep. Police. The question again is, what governance or enforcement maintains this economic system? The justice system, absolutely, or the injustice system. The federal government. Monopoly on violence, yes. All of those things maintain the system. So if we can move to the next slide, which is really basically what we've talked about, just the version of it. Yeah, so this is the extractive economy, the circle that reinforces itself. And in the middle is exploited people and certainly exploited resources. Yeah, multinational corporations. So that's the basis of where we are. And what we're going to move to now is looking at another sense of an economy that works, a regenerative economy. And I will turn this over to Sage.
Hello again. So the alternative to the extractive economy is the regenerative economy. In other words, one that works for all of us. So I think the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to, if you feel like it, close your eyes or just maybe look at something other than the screen and just take a moment to visualize what a better, more wholesome economy or economic system would look like. Think about your five senses. What does it feel like, smell like, taste like, sound like, look like? What are people doing? What does the environment look like? What do our relationships look like? So we'll just think about that for a moment, and then I'll bring us back. Okay, so if you have something you'd like to share, you can feel free to put it in the chat. We're going to move on ahead to the different pieces of the regenerative economy. So it has the same, we have this sort of a similar visual to the extractive economy, but we just have something different in each of those circles, as you can see. So the way I'd like to think of it, I'm just going to use an analogy of like the dinner table in terms of our economy. Like everyone's sitting down to eat a meal, right? So the first thing you have is the resources. The resources in this box on the left here. What is it going to take to make that food that ends up on the table, right? In an extractive economy, you will, take as many of those resources as you can get because, you don't want somebody else to take them instead of you. But in a regenerative economy, there's a focus on sustainability. There's a focus on respect for other people who might be sharing in those resources. There's a respect for the environment that those resources come from. And there's a respect for the resources themselves and how they can be used in a sustainable way. And there's also an emphasis on giving back and sharing in those resources so that we all end up with what we need. And so the resources lead to the work that you do. So in the dinner analogy, it's actually making the food, right? And what does that work look like? Well, it's obviously working together instead of apart from one another. And in an extractive economy, you largely work for yourself and maybe your family. But in a regenerative economy, we're all working together as part of a community to make sure that, like in the analogy, everybody has the food that they need to eat and survive and thrive, right? But the work is also different roles that we play in relation to the environment and one another. So it might be working to make the food, but it's also working to, build the relationships with the people that you're working together in order to make the food with, because you don't want to be working together with people that you don't know very well or that, you don't like very much or something like that, right? You want to build those relationships. So that's part of the work as well. And the work is also working together with the environment and again, those resources that you're using. And lastly, it's, you know, it's about not being alienated from what you're doing. It's, you know, you find meaning in the work because it's not only sustaining yourself and your community, but it's also helping the environment and the community thrive, which sort of takes us to the next circle, which is the purpose circle, which is all about ecological and social well-being. You know, we live our lives and we have a place in the world because we are a part of the world and not above it, right? So we're working together so that we can hope to live with each other and the environment in a more harmonious way. You know, if we're sitting at the table of the dinner analogy that I was talking about, you know, we're making sure that we all have exactly what we need to eat, right? And that nobody is going hungry. And, you know, we're working together to make sure that, you know, maybe I have more food than I need, so I'm going to give some to you, or maybe you have not enough, so you're going to get some from somewhere else, or maybe, you know, there's you have certain sensitivities to certain kinds of foods, so we, you know, we communicate and we work that out so that everybody is satisfied. So the whole idea of doing the work with the resources and the food and everything is to make sure that the people in the environment have what they need and we're all thriving together. So what those things are built on is, if the extractive economy is built on a sort of a philosophy of individualism and consumerism, the regenerative economy is built on a philosophy of compassion, which gets back to the purpose, right? We want to create a world where everyone is thriving, including the environment, our relationships, as well as ourselves as individuals. And then finally, the government that we need, or the governance system that we need to sustain a regenerative economy, is one of deep democracy. So that's when we're all respecting each other, we're all communicating with one another about what we need and what we want. So so it requires, you know, it requires that we communicate. It requires that everybody has a certain say so that we understand what each other really needs. So that's the main, my main explanation of the regenerative economy. Hopefully we now have a better sense of, you know, sort of where we are and where we would like to go. Erica, do you think we have time for questions or anything like that?
I think we have time to do like 1 or 2 questions in the chat, or like one breakout.
Yeah, we could do just, if anybody has questions in the chat about either their extractive or regenerative economies, we can try to work together and answer those. Looks like Derek had a question about the values filter.
Jake, is that something that we're going to do in the next piece, in terms of maybe we?
Yeah, to me that looks like the next section of
Yeah.
that's essentially how we move from one to the other. Yeah.
And Erica, could you read it? I think it's very small to read, and I think that would be a helpful framework before we get there.
Yeah, so I'm reading this section down, down towards the bottom here, the values filter. The way we move capital must shift economic control to communities. democratize wealth and the workplace, advance ecological restoration, drive racial justice and social equity, relocalize most production and consumption, and retain and restore cultures and traditions. Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Sorry.
Yeah, there was a question asked by Joanne, which is, how does the power shift? This idea of shift control to communities, but how does the power shift?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think we'll really talk about how to move that power, as well as how to move from the other pieces of the extractive economy to the regenerative economy in the next section. So I think we can, I think right now we have a 3-minute break, and then we will get really the, really what we've all been waiting for, is how to get the solutions for how to get from the one economy to the other. So feel free to get up, use the bathroom, get a drink, get a snack, do whatever you need to do for the next couple minutes, and come back.
And yeah, for folks, we'll come back at 2:50.
Right, folks can start coming back. I think we're about at our 3-minute break, so we'll probably jump back into things. Yeah, people feel free to come join as you're finishing up with the break, but I think I'll jump right in to our next section. Erica, do you mind going to the next slide?
Not at all.
Yeah, so now that Sandra and Sage were able to, give us lay out this extractive economy, and then what could a regenerative economy look like? The question really is, how do we get there? How do we shift? How do we make this shift happen? And that is where a just transition comes in. So basically, a just transition is the framework, and it means it's a fair shift to an economy that's ecologically sustainable, equitable, and that it will be just for all of its members. And as we all know, change is inevitable, but the justice piece isn't inevitable. And that's where us organizing and ensuring that justice is the key of how we address climate change is so critical. So we have these 6 strategies for how to go about getting a just transition. And so we're going to go through each one and give some examples. So we'll jump into the first one, which is weaken and end the bad. And you'll see a couple examples on there. So no new youth jail. Some of y'all might be familiar with this. In Seattle, community organizers are organizing around stopping this new youth jail from being built, which they've been working on for years, and it's about finished now, but have made some recent headway. And the Dow Constantine has agreed to shut this jail down in 5 years, 2025. So yeah, ending the bad, weakening the bad of this school to prison pipeline that really creates these injustices that Sonia was talking about. Another example, Shall No More, Shall No. So in 2015, I believe, grassroots organizers, some of y'all might have been a part of this, but took to waterways in their boats to protest Shell and Arctic drilling, and demanded we need to end this bad practice. So yeah, ending and weakening the bad is one strategy. Let's go on to the next strategy. Building the new. It's like re-envisioning and creating something new. On the left is the Beacon Hill Food Forest. It's a community garden in South Seattle that is led by volunteers and neighbors and community members, and it's this free food forest, so people can go and harvest and share with their neighbors and try all these different types of food. So it's like re-envisioning, what is a different economy, having this free food forest. Another example on the right you'll see is a pop-up garden that was created during CHOP, or the Capitol Hill Occupy protest, for past couple months for the Black Lives Matter movement. And Black farmers were like, no, we want ownership of land. We want food sovereignty. Let's build something. Let's create what we want in the future. So that's number 2 strategy, build the new. Next, we have divest from extractive power and invest in our power. So the Dakota Access Pipeline, where folks were organizing, and a big part of that was calling on large companies to divest from the pipeline and getting away from this like extractive power, and investing in community and organizing and connection with each other. Folks on Whidbey Island probably know this better than me, and I was just new to learn about the Green Bank solar farm or community garden. That it was so neat to learn about this kind of pea patch style space where people can all invest in solar power together and are like, yeah, having this collective farm. It's really cool. I hope to visit it someday. Investing in our power. Let's go to our next strategy. So changing the story. So that's all about Mazak's talks is a good example of this a couple years back, when really led by Indigenous people. They were shifting the story of how we think about climate change and helping people see that the intersections of Indigenous sovereignty, of climate change, of an extractive economy. So shifting really the way we think about all these interconnected issues, and that we can demand that our banks divest from fossil fuels and really help people shift their framework to see how banks were extracting and see the racism involved in that, the globalism that was involved in that extractive economy. And it was really like the first time globally there was all these actions to help defund our banks from the fossil fuels. On the right, the Black Lives Matter movement, especially over the past couple months, huge headway in like changing the story around, opening a lot of people's eyes up to police violence and shifting the story around what does a safe community look like, and how do we actually have a safe community where everyone feels safe and everyone's lives matter. So it was really shifting the story. Let's see, Derek popped up on the chat a little bit more about the Green Bank Farm, which people can check out. I'm gonna more up on that. So next we have deepening democracy. Part of this, someone asked earlier about how do we move power, and so one example of this, so deepening democracy is all about drawing down wealth and ownership and making it more equally distributed. In Seattle's, in a pilot program of trying to try out these democracy vouchers. So anyone who votes can get these vouchers and invest them in a candidate that they want, and give them these funds rather than moving away from just corporations buying out politicians, and not a democratic process. Another example is the farm workers strike that happened in Skagit and Whatcom County a couple years back. The Familias Unidas por la Justicia organized to have farm workers strike and fight for a union where they could advocate for better wages and better working conditions. And actually from that, some farm workers organized to
create their own cooperative berry farm where they had ownership and they had control, and yeah, bringing down the wealth to have it be by the community for the community, with some examples of deepening democracy. One more, let's see, we have, which is changing the rules. So Fresh Bucks in Seattle was part of that, when farmers markets are not that affordable to everyone. And so organizers asked to change the rules and double Fresh Bucks for people on EBT or food stamps, so they can have sustainably grown local produce at an affordable rate. Another example of this, changing the rules, is 0 Hour, who really were behind the Green New Deal, and was changing the rules around who we listen to. It's a youth-led movement, and so it's not about adults and politicians or whoever being the ones who have the mic, and it's about listening to youth and changing whose voices we hear, demanding justice for that. Well, next slide. So those are our 6 strategies for a just transition. If folks could think about, just take 30 seconds to share in the chat, where do you see one of these 6 strategies in your community? Let's think about, yeah, take some time to think about do you see one of these 6 strategies, a different example in your own community? Go ahead and type that into the chat. And if anyone feels brave enough, also feel free to mute yourself and share a strategy that you can think of. So we have a buy nothing, someone shared.
This is Sarah. I see the development of organic farms just locally as part of a great solution.
Yes, I like that. It's all
here on South Whidbey, we have quite a few.
Yeah, I love seeing that, and I feel very inspired and encouraged by, yeah, growing your own food or eating food that's close to you. Let's see, other people shared seniors or those who are low income getting vouchers at senior resources or farmers markets. Yes, changing how my friends are talking and what is determined is okay to talk about. Ooh, I like that. Deepening democracy by becoming more involved in neighborhood level activism. Yeah, having power and using your neighbors to gather that. Buy nothing groups, yeah. A neighbor left a zucchini on my table outside. If they wanted to take it, yeah, like just shifting the way we are caring about each other, building something new, and yeah, supporting BIPOC farmers, exactly. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for sharing. I think I'm out of my time, so I better jump over to Jake, but you can feel free to keep sharing ideas in the chat.
Thank you, Maya, and I'm loving all these ideas that are coming into the chat. So in our next section, the one that I'm going to run, something that we're going to talk about is the difference between real and false solutions, right? We have so many solutions that we have available to us. Maya describes them. We're all putting in various solutions and things that actions we're taking into our chat. And one of the things that I want to hold in mind, we're going to look at 3 example solutions, and we'll just have a brief conversation about them. Due to time, we may not get into them as much as we might like, but we can always come back to these conversations. And I keep in my mind as I'm thinking about the difference between a real and a false solution, sort of depth versus breadth. We can create a ton of different solutions, but do we create solutions that really get to the root causes of an exploitative or extractive economic system, and how are we making changes there, or the root causes of climate change? And so as we come into the next section here, I just want to invite a few questions for us to hold in our mind as we weigh in together on what we think about these solutions. These questions are, does the solution address these root causes of climate change? Does it take on the elements of a just transition that Maya just described? who or what voices are part of the solution? And is the solution sustainable? And so as we come into this, what I want to invite people to do is I'm going to read the prompt. I will also, we're going to talk about these solutions just a little bit. And if you see on your toolbar, you should be able to see that there's like a reaction section, I hope, in your toolbar in Zoom. And you should have the option to do the thumbs up, the hands clapping, or there's nothing. And so what we're going to do is for each one of these solutions, I'm going to invite people to react. And a clapping is, yes, I think this is a real solution. A thumbs up will be kind of the middle ground. It'll be like, yeah, maybe. It might be a real solution. And then if you don't respond, we'll assume that that will be, I think this is a false solution. And that's just an easy way for us to pull across here. And I'll just be kind of scanning as we go. So our first solution that I want us to just briefly think about and maybe talk about is solar panels. We were invited to kind of look into this. And so I did some research. And while solar panels offer options for renewable energy, the manufacturing of these panels produce greenhouse gas emissions. Many companies maintain effective eco-friendly practices for disposing of toxic waste produced when creating solar panels, but not all companies do this. So could you do me a favor and just think for a second and then give an emotive reaction, and you can put on your video. It may also work if your video is not on, to just say, do hands clapping, yeah, this is a real solution. Thumbs up, I don't really know, I'm on the fence, or no response, this is a false solution. Excellent, and thank you, Anlin, to also just put it into chat there, that you have the option to do that as well. And I'm gonna kind of scan across to see what people's reactions are. So whatever you pick, just sort of kind of keep going with it, yeah, in case it disappears. Yeah, solar is part of a larger solution. Seeing hand claps, and I'm seeing some thumbs up.
Yeah, I've been seeing about half and half clapping hands and thumbs,
Yeah.
but then
So,
also a lot of nothing.
So I invite somebody who maybe clapped hands and then somebody who raised their thumb. Does somebody want to kind of weigh in on why you are thinking about the solution in this way? What are you kind of thinking about in your response?
I'd like to jump in here and say that the question is somewhat ambiguous. It's not clear whether we're raising our thumbs saying, yes, solar panels are part of the solution, or no, solar panels create toxic waste due to their creation. And at least in my opinion, the toxic waste is far less harmful than the solar panel benefit is beneficial. So, but I don't know how you, I don't know exactly how the question was asked, exactly how you're going to get an accurate polling of this group on this subject.
Sure, thanks, Peter. Does somebody else just want to weigh in a little bit about kind of what elements of this conversation is for like a very real solution, or potentially what elements could be problematic?
Yeah, I gave it a thumbs up because it is a renewable resource, but the other aspect though is our consumption. And I think I've seen that the rate our consumption is increasing, that we can't really adequately convert to renewable resources to really match that consumption. So we really need to address that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Those are good points, Peter. I just wanted to mention we had a poll originally planned that would have made this much clearer, but we're figuring it out how to make it work without the ability to do a poll. So I think Jake is explaining that in that sense, if that's okay that I bumped in there.
Thank you, Sandra. And so,
I just think solar, I think, is an important part of renewable energy, but I think it's part of a solution, but we also need to do a lot more research on R&D on storage. And also, and we don't talk enough about energy efficiency and cutting out as much energy use as we possibly can.
Oh, is that the real question here, though, or is it more about solar, which provides electricity, which is a much cleaner source than fossil fuels, which currently dominate our lives? And also distributed solar, like we have on our house. Everybody's got the potential just about for, if you have a roof, to put panels on it. Plus it creates good jobs. The green economy is a great feature of this. So for me, it's a clearly an applause issue.
Yeah, so I want to just weigh in just because of time, and I know that this is something that we could talk about for a while. When I was looking into this, I think when we're holding in this heuristic and framework of a just transition, right? One of the things that is just noticeable, solar panels is certainly, you can talk about it as part of a greater solution. There are elements of it that are really beneficial and some things that we're still working on with it. And so it's a topic that I think we can circle around, but I'm really interested by how we use this framework of a just transition. And so I want to move to our next example because I'm just checking our time too. And I want to invite people, as you think about this, to think, one example we have is in 2015, Doc Green's young leaders in the Green Movement Committee won a resolution from the city of Seattle to create 100 living wage green internships for low-income young workers of color in Seattle. And I'd like to just invite people to just say, do we feel that using that just transition, right, of changing the story and deepening democracy, changing the rules, those frameworks, is this a real or kind of false solution? What do we think? Feel free to use the emotes and the reactions if you need to as well. I see Gary and Diana is clapping.
Yeah, I see a lot of clapping hands.
Okay, yeah. Can somebody just let me know why did you clap? What prompted that for you? I can share my thought of this as well. So one of the benefits of this action, right, is that it gave pathways for the environmental movement to be led by those most impacted. And so one of the things that we could see is that this is both deepening a democracy and it's changing the rules a little bit, helping us regain some control and agency and supporting those people who are going to be impacted by this. And I see a lot that's going on in the chat and I really appreciate that as well. So one of the things I'm acknowledging is that I am close to out of time because we can have a conversation about this for a long time. And we may continue this in the chat as well. And so I'm actually going to pass over our third piece here and just briefly note what could be a false solution, which is ideas of like cap and trade. Drawing from Friends of the Earth, the notion that you can have a permit and there's a limit amount of emissions allowed within a given period, this cap for carbon emissions. And you can get permits to emit CO2 that are then auctioned or allocated, right? And this is presented as this potential solution. However, how does it also continue to work and maintain an extractive economy? That is one of the questions that we want to hold and really think about is when we analyze these solutions. So I'd like to just say thank you, everybody, for all of the comments in the chat. And I want to just pass this on to Maya at this point.
And thanks everyone for working with our time frame. So as we're kind of wrapping up our time together during this meeting, we're gonna take a couple minutes to do a breakout session, and this is where we want people.
Maya, can you lean in a little bit? It's hard to hear you.
Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah.
I can talk. Yeah. So wrapping up our workshop, and we're gonna take some a couple minutes to break off into pairs and think about and reflect with your partner, what are my next steps? Using this just transition framework, like what's one commitment I can make moving forward? And where do I see my next step in a just transition? So Jake, if you don't mind breaking folks up, and then we'll see you back in a few minutes.
I'm going to open up the rooms, and then I'm just going to shift people around so that you're in pairs. So one moment.
And yeah, as people are sharing with each other, feel free to, keep in mind what, and if you want to, when we come back together as a larger group, we're going to hear from a couple pairs about what they talked about. And yeah, so we'll see you all in a few. Jake, if you're pretty close.
Yeah, this should be open now, so people should be moving in.
I think folks are coming back, so maybe we'll jump in. Does the group want to unmute them? What did you talk about? Steps being.
I can't really hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. We're just asking you to share back what you talked about. Do you want to go, Jack? Is that you, Jackie?
Sure. Yeah, showing up was a big one. I think between the two of us at the very end, we came to that agreement how it comes through. Like somebody brought a Woody Allen comment, but yeah, just showing up I think is like a really big one, and yeah.
What else do people talk about in their group? And feel free to share it in the chat. I can also, so I'd love to hear any youth who I'd love to hear, where you see your next steps are, or any wisdom for other people to learn from, ways they can get plugged in. The other folks in the chat shared, we talked about the origins of just transition and coming from a labor perspective. Okay, cool. More about the unions and maybe getting involved through that. We have another question. I'd like to know from the USL group an answer to the following. About how much we admire you for your leadership initiative. The rest of us, older folks, to increase your membership among your peers and community. Are there incentives we could provide for? Is there any USL excited to answer?
I think I might be the last youth on here because I think some people had to leave early. So I can speak to that. And then if anybody else has had any, I guess, work in activism as maybe a younger person, then by all means speak up. Recently, we've been working with Rotary, and we've been maybe trying to get some volunteer hours for the things that we do. Things like that get youth interested, and then they kind of pull youth in. You get a reward by getting volunteer hours, which you need for high school, but you also then start learning more about activism and how to run things on your own and how to do more, and it makes a more lasting impact, I guess, with that little hook. This is something that we need to work on as in USL, simply because we don't have as many youth as we would like, but we have been slowly acquiring members, and it's been a lot of fun. So reaching out one-on-one, reaching out to youth that you've had connections with in the past, things like that.
So Maggie, do you think that, I mean, have you started school yet? I mean, school at home yet? Has school started?
So school officially starts next week for me, but we have started getting in contact with teachers, and I've actually reached out personally to teachers about activism as well.
Okay, because I was thinking that once you get school and you're doing your Zooms, you know, your classes, because I think you're doing all Zoom classes or online classes, that maybe then you'll get more students because they might be more interested. So that's what I'm hoping is going to happen for you.
Yeah.
So, because you've done a really good job all summer long, you know, all spring and summer of putting this whole thing together, and you'll be a good voice to get more people to join you.
That's a really good, yeah, it's cool to just see like our intergenerational meeting and like how do we, yeah, get different ages all plugged in together. Maybe I'll just share out a couple more ideas from people up here. So continuing to show up, other ways to get involved, like eating local, doing more research, showing up for protests, decreasing consumption. If other folks have other ideas, feel free to share in the chat. Yeah, maybe I'll hand it over to Sandra, who's just going to do a closing, share a few closing shots. A few closing thoughts before we end.
Thank you. I'm so glad for everyone being here and the community and the discussion and the presence of everyone. I really appreciate that. And there's so much more to do. I think that that's something we're clear about, but hopefully the connection and supporting everybody helps that happen more. What I'd like to do is just do a quick regrounding, asking for a share in the chat, and there has been a link to an evaluation that would be really helpful for us to understand how this worked for you. So let's just remember our bodies, which are such gifts. We are part of the earth. Our bodies are the earth. We are part of nature. It's not the separation that we've been led to believe that we have. Feel free to take a gentle breath and a nice exhale. And if you'd like, you can look outside or another place than your screen, or close your eyes. And feel your sense of your heart connecting with the vibration of the earth and with each other, and allowing that part of you to be the impetus for what you want to create going forward. And then feel free to take another gentle breath and come back to this moment. If you can please share, Sharon already just did that, her takeaway, but if you have any takeaways, one thing that you gained from being here today in the chat, that would be lovely. And think again about your deeper purpose, what you want to step from this learning energy into. So how you want to integrate what you've learned today, connecting with other people, connecting with your actions, learning more. I think that feels like the end to me of our official time. If anyone has any other comments they want to add or anything that they want to share, feel free to do it either in the chat or if you have a moment, and if it's, you can unmute yourself. But I'm very grateful for everyone being here. Thank you so much.
I want to say so much gratitude, and I'm so thankful for everything that Calyx and Indivisible Whidbey and CARW and the Beyond False Solutions workshop has done today. So thank you guys so much. And I really appreciate you guys being here. If you do have any more questions for me or anybody else, just let us know. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining.